Hello everybody and welcome back to our studies in the law of tort. This is the first of our members only content. So essentially what we've done is gone through quite a significant number of videos on the law of tort, on crime, on trusts and land and all these different kinds of things. But in each of these core modules, there's about 3 or 4 different chapters, about 20 or so lessons that are that I've not really gone into in much detail. So, for example, intentional torts and defamation are 2 examples of that. And I've reserved these for members-only content as a way for you to get the most out of your memberships as level 2 or above members. This is, of course, just going to be a free lesson to make that available and clear to everybody. From now on, the rest of these tort lessons will be members-only content with our little logo in the top corner there that illustrates that point. And so, essentially, what this lesson is going to be is an introduction to trespass as part of our studies of the intentional torts. So, this is something that is covered also in the study guide that was released a couple of weeks ago as well, and is something that is particularly interesting, especially when we think about the interrelationship that exists between the law of tort, the sort of civil law of tort, and criminal law, specifically criminal law concerning offences against the person. So we'll take an introduction and a broad overview of trespass in this lesson, and then start to think about trespass to the person, trespass to land, and trespass to property as we go on in future lessons' time. So, as I said, this is the first of a number of lessons which will be exclusive to members only, or at least this is this is a sort of introduction video. The rest of these lessons will be exclusive to members only. This lesson is going to take an introduction to the subject of intentional torts. So as a basic summary then, intentional torts or trespass, they're relatively similar in terms of the content that you study. Trespass itself refers to, when we think about the concept of the law of tort, refers to the direct, intentional, or even negligent or neglecting interference with a person's possession of their land, their property, or their person without any kind of lawful justification. Now, when we think about trespass, we're talking about the unlawful interference with someone's land, property, or person. And there are 3 main types of trespass that we can think about. You have, firstly, trespass to land. This is when somebody enters another person's property without their permission. No actual damage is required, as trespass is something known as actionable per se. It is actionable without proof of harm. So, merely walking onto somebody's land without their permission would constitute a trespass to land. Now, whether or not you then get sued for trespass to land is obviously a different question. There are the sort of practical implications of suing someone who just happens to stumble onto your land or intentionally goes onto your land. If you get them off your land, then no harm done. But generally speaking, the legal concept of trespass, the idea of trespass as a legal idea, is actionable per se, which means that you do not need to show that they went onto your land and, let's say, damaged a barn or chopped down a tree or did anything that was or smashed a window or did any kind of criminal damage in order for you to be able to have an actionable claim in tort for trespass to land. When it comes to trespass to property, we are not talking about realty in this regard. We're talking about personal property. Trespass to land, of course, concerns realty. Realty being the idea of land property, basically the property and property rights that are conferred when we talk about land law. So that can also include not only just the ownership of land, but also ownership of interest in land, such as an easement or something of that kind of regard. Now, trespass to property then is your personal property, your laptop, your TV, your table, your desk, whatever. This is the wrongful interference with someone's personal property. So if you were to damage or take someone's goods without their consent, not only could you be put on charge for criminal damage or even put on charge for theft in relation to the criminal law, but there might also be civil penalties that are imposed as a result through this avenue of trespass to property. And then finally, you have probably the most extensive and the one that you will be spending the most time, at least in these lessons, learning about if you choose to go on to watch the rest of these videos. This is trespass to the person. This includes actions such as assault, battery, and false imprisonment. There's also the sort of quite niche crime, or not crime, sorry, the niche tort of the Wilkinson and Downton tort, which we will get to towards the end of this lesson, concerning a very particular and quite peculiar case of Wilkinson and Downton, which creates itself a new type of tort similar to Rylands and Fletcher. So, as we noted then, trespass to land simply occurs when a person unlawfully enters or remains on land that belongs to another person without any permission or lawful justification. Simple as that. That's really all we need to know when we think about trespass to land. It's one of the more common forms of trespass, especially in comparison to trespass to property and trespass to the person, because generally trespass protects, at least trespass to land, it protects the claimant's exclusive right to control and to have access to their land. You don't want people, if you owned a farm and you had exclusive access to that farm, you don't want people just wandering over it and walking through. If you owned a house and somebody starts setting up a tent on your front garden, you would probably not be very, very happy with that. That's your property, and you want your property to be yours and to have your own control over it. And so with all that in mind, generally speaking, trespass to land just concerns the unlawful entry or remaining on land, and as mentioned in the previous slide, not actionable per se. So let's say I'm walking on this particular piece of land here in this image. Let's say I damage one of the cows on this on this particular piece of land, or chop down one of the trees in the background. Those things are not necessary to prove a trespass to land. Merely being on that property is enough to show trespass to land. Those additional things might even incorporate trespass to property and criminal damage as well. So those are things that you should make very clear and understand to be the distinction between trespass to land and what is required to show a trespass to land. A trespass to property concerns itself with trespass to goods, essentially. These involve the unlawful interference with another person's possession of movable property, sometimes known as chattels, or just generally speaking known as goods. This is the type of trespass that is actionable if there is a direct interference with the claimant's personal property. So this is, again, regardless of whether or not there was damage that actually occurred. So, for example, merely having or interfering with an individual's property, their personal property, would be enough to constitute a trespass to chattel, a trespass to property. I don't need to then go and destroy that property or damage that property or break that property in some way. So that, in that regard, then means that it is sort of similar to trespass to land in the sense that I don't actually have to go and commit theft or criminal damage in order for there to be an actionable claim in the law of tort for trespass to property. Although generally speaking, when we think about a trespass to property tort, there will probably be some kind of damage or interference that does actually result in damage being occurred, although that is not a requirement that is necessary for this particular tort to be satisfied. Finally then, and most extensively, there's trespass to the person. This involves the direct and unlawful interference with an individual's body or an individual's freedom. This second bit is very important. An individual's body, of course, concerns itself with the torts of assault and battery, but freedom also concerns itself with false imprisonment. The keeping of an individual in a place for a period of time and not letting them leave can constitute a false imprisonment, and that might be the case regardless of if you actually interfere directly and unlawfully with that individual's body. It encompasses several torts, as I've noted. This includes assault and battery, that we will get to in future lessons' time, and it also includes false imprisonment, as well as the special tort of the Wilkinson and Downton rule.